revolved around marijuana-related humor. Carson understood this and chose a different approach. Instead of avoiding the obvious, he leaned into the comedy. He often played the role of the confused straight man, pretending not to understand their references, while giving them opportunities to deliver punchlines. The chemistry worked perfectly. Viewers enjoyed watching Carson interact with the duo because everyone was in on the joke. Their appearances felt playful rather than controversial. Rather than seeing their behavior as a problem, Carson recognized that it was part of what made them popular. His willingness to let them remain authentic created some of the most memorable interviews of the era. The result was a rare situation in which a guest's altered image became an asset rather than a challenge. Actor Peter Fonda became one of the defining figures of the counterculture movement after starring in Easy Rider. His association with psychedelic culture was well known. One particularly unusual Tonight Show appearance became legendary among staff members. According to accounts from behind the scenes, Fonda appeared unusually distracted and disconnected. His responses often wandered into philosophical territory, leaving Carson with the difficult task of keeping the interview focused. When asked about upcoming projects, Fonda reportedly shifted from discussing films to discussing time, consciousness, and the nature of reality. Audience members were fascinated but confused. Recognizing that the conversation was moving further away from anything resembling a traditional interview, Carson allegedly shortened the segment and moved on earlier than planned. What made the situation noteworthy was Carson's refusal to panic. He maintained a calm demeanor, treated Fonda respectfully, and avoided turning the moment into a spectacle. Later appearances by Fonda proved far more conventional, suggesting Carson's willingness to give guests second chances. British actor Oliver Reed represented a different category entirely. Known for his larger-than-life personality and heavy drinking, Reed had built a reputation for unpredictability long before appearing on The Tonight Show. Unfortunately, his appearance reportedly confirmed many of those concerns. At first, the interview seemed manageable. However, Reed quickly became louder, more aggressive, and increasingly difficult to control. Unlike guests who simply appeared relaxed or distracted, Reed's behavior created genuine tension in the studio. Staff members recalled growing concern as he interrupted Carson, shouted unexpectedly, and behaved in ways that made crew members uncomfortable. Carson remained composed, but observers noticed a significant shift in his demeanor. Instead of guiding the conversation gently, he became more direct and assertive. Eventually, the segment was shortened. For Carson, Reed represented an important boundary. While he could tolerate guests who were slightly intoxicated or under the influence, he had little patience for behavior that felt threatening or hostile. Reed reportedly became one of the very few celebrities permanently banned from returning to the show. The decision demonstrated Carson's belief that entertainment should never come at the expense of safety or professionalism. Few entertainers possessed more talent than Sammy Davis Jr. Singer, dancer, actor, comedian, and impressionist, Davis was one of the most versatile performers in show business. Carson loved having him on the program because he could always deliver an entertaining segment. One appearance in the mid-1970s generated considerable backstage speculation. Davis arrived with unusually high energy. He spoke rapidly, jumped between stories, and seemed unable to sit still. While many viewers simply saw an enthusiastic performer, others wondered whether something else was contributing to his intensity. Rumors circulated that cocaine use may have played a role, though nothing was ever confirmed publicly. Whatever the cause, Davis remained professional throughout the interview. He never lost control of the conversation or created difficulties for Carson. Instead, he delivered exactly what audiences expected: charisma, humor, and nonstop entertainment. Carson skillfully adapted to the pace, occasionally guiding discussion back on track, while allowing Davis's natural energy to shine. The appearance became memorable not because it was a disaster, but because it demonstrated how some performers could remain effective even while generating speculation about their offstage behavior. Looking back at these stories reveals something important about Johnny Carson. His greatest talent was not simply making people laugh. It was managing the unpredictable nature of live television. Every guest required a different approach. George Carlin needed freedom to riff. Richard Pryor needed gentle guidance. Cheech and Chong needed a willing straight man. Peter Fonda required careful navigation. Oliver Reed demanded firm control. Carson adjusted constantly. He rarely judged guests publicly. Instead, he focused on one goal: creating entertaining television while preserving everyone's dignity. Former staff members often describe Carson as operating according to a simple principle. What mattered was not what a guest did before the show. What mattered was whether they could perform when the cameras started rolling. When a guest remained entertaining and professional, Carson found ways to make the interview work. When someone became aggressive, disrespectful, or incapable, for 3 decades, Johnny Carson ruled late-night television with unmatched charm, wit, and professionalism. Every evening followed a familiar formula. Carson delivered his monologues, welcomed celebrity guests, and guided conversations that millions of Americans watched before heading to bed. To viewers, everything appeared effortless. Behind the scenes, however, the reality was often far more unpredictable. The Tonight Show was the most influential talk show of its era. A successful appearance could boost a celebrity's career overnight, while an awkward or embarrassing interview could become the talk of Hollywood. Because of that pressure, many guests arrived nervous, anxious, and sometimes under the influence of alcohol, prescription medication, or recreational drugs. Former staff members have often described Carson as having an extraordinary ability to read people. Within moments of a guest walking onto the stage, he could usually tell whether they were completely focused or chemically altered. Rather than publicly embarrass anyone, Carson developed a reputation for managing difficult situations with remarkable grace. Some guests remained entertaining despite their altered state. Others created memorable television for all the wrong reasons. These are some of the most talked about examples. Among Carson's most frequent guests was comedian George Carlin. During the 1970s, Carlin reinvented himself from a clean-cut comic into a counterculture icon. His long hair, edgy material, and outspoken views reflected the changing culture of the decade. Carlin never made much effort to hide his fondness for marijuana. Many viewers suspected he was often under its influence during his Tonight Show appearances. Yet, unlike some performers, Carlin remained sharp, articulate, and incredibly funny. His conversations with Carson often felt spontaneous and unpredictable. Carson would introduce a topic, and then simply allow Carlin to explore it in his own unique way. The result was frequently comedy gold. Although Carson admired Carlin's talent, insiders have suggested that he had concerns about Carlin's reliability behind the scenes. While many comedians were invited to serve as guest hosts, Carlin never received that opportunity. Nevertheless, Carson clearly respected him and welcomed him back repeatedly. What made Carlin different from many others was that his substance use rarely interfered with his performance. Instead of appearing confused or out of control, he remained one of the most engaging guests the show ever featured. If George Carlin represented controlled unpredictability, Richard Pryor represented something far more volatile. Widely regarded as one of the greatest comedians in history, Pryor possessed extraordinary comedic instincts. However, his struggles with substance abuse were well documented and became increasingly serious during the 1970s. Several of Pryor's Tonight Show appearances revealed both his genius and his instability. He could begin a segment with brilliant stories and razor-sharp observations, only to drift unexpectedly into unrelated topics moments later. Staff members recalled occasions when Carson had to carefully redirect the conversation whenever Pryor appeared distracted or disconnected. Rather than drawing attention to the problem, Carson would smoothly ask a new question, crack a joke, or transition to another subject. What made these moments remarkable was Carson's genuine concern. He recognized Pryor's immense talent and appeared determined to protect him from public embarrassment. Many hosts might have exploited such situations for ratings or laughs. Carson instead worked to ensure that viewers remembered Pryor's brilliance rather than his struggles. His handling of the comedian remains one of the strongest examples of his professionalism and empathy. Not every guest received the same level of patience. Author Truman Capote had been a popular television guest for years. Intelligent, witty, and charming, he often delivered memorable interviews. However, one appearance in 1980 reportedly changed everything. From the moment Capote entered the studio, it became clear something was wrong. He struggled to speak clearly, appeared disoriented, and frequently lost his train of thought. Carson attempted to keep the conversation moving. simplifying questions and providing opportunities for Capote to recover. Unfortunately, the situation continued to deteriorate. Crew members later described the atmosphere in the control room as tense and uncomfortable. Producers reportedly worried about how much of the interview could actually be broadcast. Unlike previous guests whose altered state merely added unpredictability, Capote appeared unable to function effectively as a television guest. Carson viewed this as crossing an important line. According to people who worked on the show, Carson felt that arriving in such condition demonstrated a lack of respect for both the audience and the program. The appearance became infamous behind the scenes and allegedly resulted in Capote never being invited back during Carson's tenure. The incident also led to greater scrutiny of guests before they went on air. While some celebrities attempted to hide their comedy empire around cannabis culture, by the time they appeared on The Tonight Show, audiences already knew exactly what to expect: their film, stand-up routines, and public image.